Hello. Our reading today is from Matthew chapter 5, the Beatitudes. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Last week, we talked about the two laws, loving God and loving our neighbor. And that we can get into trouble when we think we understand God, because God is something that the human brain is not capable of grasping. And we must love our neighbors just as they are, not as we would have them be. But today, we are celebrating a church feast day called All Saints and All Souls together. Technically, it actually falls in the middle of the week, but we are celebrating as many churches do on Sunday. The lectionary for All Saints brings us to the Beatitudes, Matthew 5. Now, if the two great laws summed up what we should be doing, the Beatitudes tells us more specifically about how to go about loving God and our neighbors. The Beatitudes, unfortunately, are one of the most ignored parts of the Bible, at least for most of us. We like to forget things that make us uncomfortable, but here it is, so we might as well talk about it. The eightfold instructions are actually 7 instructions, with the last one being a summary of what is likely to happen to us. Augustine of Hippo, one of the earliest main figures in the church, insisted there were technically only 7, and I tend to agree. So what does Jesus mean when he says, blessed are the poor in spirit? This has been debated for generations. The Eastern Church uses a different translation of the Bible called the Peshitta, which was written in Aramaic, the language of Jesus. It's an ancient translation. That one says, blessed are the humble. The First Nations or indigenous translation says something closer to our own and says, blessing rests on the poor, the ones with broken spirits. But I think we get the drift. Less of us, more of God. Some of you may have heard of the ancient community of Qumran, which produced what are now called the Dead Sea Scrolls. There is an ancient scroll there called the Thanksgiving Scroll, and it kind of mirrors the Beatitudes. It says, to have appointed me in truth a messenger of the peace of thy goodness, to proclaim to the meek the multitude of thine mercies, and to let them that are of contrite spirit hear salvation from everlasting source, and to them that mourn everlasting joy. Wow. It seems to be a common theme. There is another beatitude that I would like us to look at Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Now, righteousness is a term used by some Christians to judge other groups of people, always looking down their noses at them. This is not what Christ called us to do. The Eastern Translation says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of justice." The Indigenous Translation says, the blessing rests on the ones who are hunted down and mistreated for doing what is right. This is what it means to walk in love and bring Christ's love out into the world. Because the secular world is more focused on individual gain than the welfare of others. Folks, we are tied to God and to the rest of creation by divine DNA or stardust. When we take a stance of humility, we are laying down our own sinfulness at the feet of the Lamb and washing our robes in his blood, as the author of our Revelation reading today makes clear. We cannot be cleansed unless we admit that we are sinners. Walking around judging other people is not humility. It's just not. Humility is taking a long, hard look at our own sins, not someone else's. And when we are humble, we naturally begin to see that we must oppose injustice in this selfish individual world we live in. We must speak out when entire groups of people are being vilified for being of a different culture or have a different skin pigmentation. We must quit seeing the world as us versus them, winners, losers. The kingdom of heaven is for all, period. And remember, God gets to pick who comes to the banquet, not us. God picks. The only things we need to concentrate on are being humble or bringing our own sins to God and opposing injustice in the world. Now, if we do these two things, then we will truly love God and our neighbors. And we will join all the saints like Augustine and our loved ones who have passed before, as well as all those who will come after us. We are truly connected to everyone and everything. In our church today, we have pictures of loved ones up at the altar. We do this so that we can remember that they are always with us. The only thing that separates us from them is the thought that they aren't there. What would it be like if we woke up every day and acknowledged the presence of our loved ones and all the saints who are watching over us from the banquet? Perhaps it would be easier to lay our own sins down at the feet of the Lamb if we knew that they were watching us. Perhaps it would be second nature to defend the persecuted, to feed the hungry, and to love the unlovable. My prayer for today is this. Gracious and loving God, we ask you to send your Spirit to strengthen us so that we may be brave enough to be humble and seek justice for all who are persecuted, so that we may more fully love you and our neighbors. We ask these things in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ.